Tokyo Revengers was already heat to begin with, but ending the episode with literally fiery Takemichi just done with Draken and Mikey's shit after losing his childhood memories is bad enough that our boy Draken destroyed a, what was a 2,500 piece puzzle that he spent like 3 days working on. Is another thing to destroy literally every symbolic memory he has. And it's interesting because the question I had while watching this episode was, how was someone like Takemichi going to avoid the conflict, which was not only the gang being split into two, but also Draken dying? And seemingly he's done so without actually doing anything, which, if this is to be believed by the end of the episode, by them naturally being friends with Takemichi, which didn't happen in the original timeline. When they were pissed off, they used to apparently get pissed off at each other a lot. But there was a certain moment, which was Pod ending up stabbing the leader of another gang, and him going into jail, difference of opinion of what should happen. So the fact that when Takemichi wasn't there in the original timeline, most likely they met up on quote-unquote the battlefield, and them being mad at each other with half of an army behind their back, you can kind of see the conflict and how it would escalate. But by Takemichi naturally being both of their friends, they both end up visiting him on the same day. So while Takemichi suffers, the bicycle, the bat, the skateboard, all of that stuff, he seemingly has avoided, in theory anyway, one of the biggest conflicts that he's had to deal with to date. And I like that because I've complimented the time travel mechanics in this show a hell of a lot. I think the idea of going forwards and backwards in time, having fixed date, you just jump a set amount of years either forward and backwards, it allows for a lot of creativity in terms of just freedom overall with the writing. But the idea that instead of going the typical route, okay, we know a shooter pulls a trigger at 12:02 p.m. on this date at this place, so we just need to push it away. That's what they were building up in the episode, right? When the smashed beer bottle's coming down, it's like, oh, so Draken will get stabbed. What will happen is Takemichi will get stabbed, and he clearly can't die right then and there, but that will avoid and maybe trigger a different type of conflict. Instead, no, that didn't happen. It completely played with your expectations of time travel stories, and in doing so, created something all the more interesting. And by having them just coincidentally meet up at the same location, not with army of goons behind their back because they value Takemichi as a friend, it actually, in theory, should hopefully allow them to overcome their current issues and most likely bring the gang back together. And that's really interesting. Even if it doesn't quite go that direction, what this series is showing me week after week is what you assume you know about time travel stories. There's core fundamentals and there's core mechanics that are familiar, but the way it's being drawn out in the narrative is completely different than anything I've personally seen in this type of genre. And while anime definitely has its high points for time travel, it doesn't have as many high points as I think other types of fiction do, like books and things like that. But I have to say, Tokyo Revengers is one of the best I've seen in this medium, and it's only getting better with time. Personally, I think this is my favorite episode. It had great humor, it had great action, and it completely left me speechless for most of the episode. Up until the point where he passes out and then ends up in the hospital and you get that whole blowjob joke scene with his girlfriend and basically what looks to be his mistress. I mean, it was pretty much non-stop intense. From literally a man refusing to back down, apparently is one of their best fighters, completely annihilated, to the shifting of Mikey one-shotting once again another leader, bringing everyone together, thinking in my head, okay, well then what's the conflict? Knife coming out, beer bottle coming out, like, there's so many points where I'm like, how can this be the trigger? And seriously, when Draken, like, literally stopped the blow, when I saw the knife come, originally I thought that knife was going towards Draken from the man he was holding, instead no, it's a man who ended up turning himself in, got a year in the slammer, would have been life if he actually killed him. It's just, there's so many different things, and it feels like as strong as the relationship between Draken and Mikey is, when it comes to the gang and the difference of opinion of how things should be, it does seem like it's a little rocky and can be explosive, especially if Mikey seems determined. Because Mikey is a type of character that if someone's still standing, even if they're swinging with literally no energy, he's not going to interfere because they still feel like they can fight. When Paul ended up tagging out, that's when Mikey stood his ground and basically took care of business. He took out the trash. So Mikey definitely has a very, on one hand, I really like his idea of how to handle things because obviously this entire situation, they shouldn't be a part of a gang, right? But the way he views his comrades is that I think it makes a lot of sense given how he views Takemichi, someone who refuses to back down, given the connection with his brother, just that's how he used to be. So anyone who's standing their ground is something that he respects and he won't trample over their feelings, but on the flip side, that could get a lot of people killed, and that's why you need a character like Draken to keep them level-headed. And if they ever officially split up, or even if they split up temporary and then Mikey ends up doing something without Draken's advice, it could be very bad, all things considered. But this was an incredible episode. It was chock full of action, suspense, drama. I really had no idea how he was going to deal with this conflict, and the fact that they just met up at his door is so amazing. Because rather than Takemichi taking a blow for the commander, or doing this or that, the things that we've seen time and time again in time travel-like stories, we literally have a coincidence because both of these characters, like our main character, it's only natural that they could bump into each other when they go to visit to make sure their friend is still A-okay. And that's interesting. I mean, it still could have twists, don't get me wrong. There could be, like, next week comes in, they still are parting ways. But it says to me that it's not always going to be about Takemichi purposely doing things to change the timeline. His presence with these two and being a part of their lives, in theory, could change a lot of it for him, for better and for worse. And that's going to be really interesting. I mean, should they part ways and not be friends again? Most likely, I assume Takemichi would want to jump forward in time, get more information, maybe make up a plan, jump backwards again. Either way, Tokyo Revengers is a very difficult series to predict. Even when you have a good idea of where it may go, it always throws different curveballs at you. And the whole comedy scene towards the end, I thought was a breath of fresh air, especially considering the drama that we experienced. Literally, it was some of the most intense atmosphere we've seen, from blood to just, honestly, if tension could cut, we'd all have severed heads, is the best way to put it. So the friends making jokes like, oh yeah, they're screwed over. No, they always fight. There's no big deal. And it's like, okay, well, we're actually a little relieved. Oh, in comes Draken. No, I hate that guy. I'm like, why? Why do you gotta do this to me? This show's amazing. I love it a lot. Like, sometimes the comedy, when it does pop up with Takemichi just having, like, these exaggerated, like, ridiculous faces, I'm like, it's funny, but do we really need it? But seriously, the comedy in this episode was, like, 10 out of 10. From literally kicking off with the blowjob scene where I'm like, someone's gotta, like, think something else is going on there. Her head's moving a little sexually, if you know what I'm saying. And then the girlfriend had to come in, and poor girl is the best way to put it. But just, like, the eyes coming from it, it feels like Looney Tunes in a lot of ways. Just the eyeballs coming out, or just, like, the exaggerated everything. The comedy in this series is just, even when it may not be exactly what I'm looking for, it's still humorous by itself. But in an episode like this, I literally think the comedy made it better by, like, relieving the atmosphere, making it so we're not feeling like we're dodging daggers in this atmosphere. And just the numerous times I was like, oh, we're gonna have guns pulled, oh, baseball bat, oh shit, he's throwing a bicycle, but it was just a ridiculous, it felt like toddlers fighting, even though they're some of the most dangerous characters we've seen. This show, and I think if this is a good sign of how the comedy is going to be used going forward, this is another great thing to, like, scream about why Tokyo Revengers is a step above a lot of what people are probably watching this season. Yesterday I just had a lot of stuff going on, so I didn't have time to do it on Saturday. Though personally, I did really enjoy being able to do it on a Sunday, so if I'm ever feeling not up to do it on Saturday, just know Tokyo Revengers will be coming the next day. I'm going to review the show in full, don't get me twisted or anything like that. I love the show. It's one of my favorites of this season. But let me know your thoughts and feelings on this week's episode. Where do you think it's going to go with next week's? And your favorite moment out of the intense or even the funny. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share, support, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't been around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.